Consider the scenario where Donald Trump unexpectedly crashed Barack Obama's live town hall, only to be instantly muted by a single sentence the entire nation keeps reviewing. The audience was completely caught off guard. It was intended to be a tranquil primetime town hall on a Tuesday night in Phoenix, Arizona. Barack Obama was seated under glaring studio lights, jacket unbuttoned, tie loosened a bit, appearing relaxed but fully composed. He was in the middle of discussing the durability of democracy when the moderator's earpiece suddenly burst with static. The mood immediately transformed. "Mr. President," the moderator stammered, his eyes locked onto the camera lens, "we have just been alerted that President Trump is calling in." Audible gasps spread throughout the audience. No one anticipated a sitting president would crash his predecessor's forum, and certainly not live on national television. Behind the safety glass, producers were in a frenzy. The moderator appeared as though he had just received an emergency alert broadcast. However, Obama remained unfazed, leaning back in his seat, one hand resting upon the armrest and the other lightly touching his chin. He offered a faint smile. "Put him through," Obama instructed in that steady, deliberate cadence Americans remembered so well. The large screen above the stage began to flicker on. Trump's face materialized through a live feed, his voice immediately booming across the hall. "Barack, I felt compelled to call in," Trump started. "I am watching this performance, and it is an absolute disgrace. You are lecturing about democracy, but under your leadership, jobs were vanishing everywhere. Under my administration, we achieved the greatest economy in history. Everybody understands it. Nobody has ever witnessed numbers like those before." Murmurs filled the crowded hall. This event was not merely unexpected, it was history unfolding live. Obama did not reply immediately. He glanced toward the gathering, permitting the silence to hang in the air before speaking as if engaged in a private conversation. "Well," he stated with a hint of humor, "it appears we have company this evening." Laughter shattered the tension for a fleeting moment, but everyone present sensed what was approaching. It was an unplanned confrontation that could go viral within seconds. Trump, feeling emboldened after his interruption, pressed even harder. "People recall how disastrous it was prior to my arrival. Manufacturing was practically dead. China was completely taking over. I fixed the situation. The numbers do not lie. Without my leadership, this nation would have collapsed. And now you sit there pretending you achieved something positive. You did not. People realize it, Barack." His words were loud, unrefined, yet incredibly forceful. This was the specific kind of rhetoric designed to achieve dominance. He was still the president, after all. His name was everywhere, his voice echoed on every screen. Yet the audience's focus was no longer directed at Trump. All eyes shifted back to Obama. Would he take the bait, react with anger, or maintain his composure? Obama leaned slightly forward, hands clasped, his gaze fixed steadily on the camera. When he finally spoke, his tone was calm and measured, the voice of someone who understood the precise value of timing. "Mr. President," Obama stated, pausing very deliberately, "I believe the American people care less about who yells the loudest and significantly more about who actually tells them the truth." The entire room erupted in thunderous applause. The moderator shifted uneasily, relieved but fully aware of the tension escalating once again. Trump attempted to jump back into the conversation, his voice climbing in volume, but the fundamental dynamic had shifted. Obama's absolute composure, his tone, and his sheer presence carried significantly more weight than volume ever could. Viewers across the country could feel it. One individual was raging, the other remained entirely unmoved. The moment no longer belonged to Trump, it belonged completely to Obama. However, this exchange was just the opening act. What transpired next would transform a heated argument into one of the most frequently replayed live television moments in modern political history. Shops across downtown D.C. appeared calm, but inside one specific office, the atmosphere was incredibly tense. No one present was waving flags or uttering patriotic slogans. The individuals gathered were high-stakes lawyers, crisis experts, and media strategists assembled for one solitary purpose: to contain the DNA leak. At the center sat Raymond Hall, Melania's most trusted advisor, joined by two attorneys from a firm renowned for managing high-level political crises behind closed doors. On the sleek conference table rested a sensitive folder containing the leaked DNA results. Everyone stared at the folder as if it were a live explosive device. "We have two primary options," one lawyer stated firmly: discredit the information or distract the public. "We can assert it is entirely fabricated, link it directly to political rivals, perhaps term it part of a smear campaign targeting the First Lady," or what Hall interrupted, sounding weary of partial measures. "Or," the lawyer continued, adjusting his tie, "we bury it beneath a much bigger story, another controversy. In Washington, people forget very quickly when you provide them with something else to chase." Hall rubbed his temple slowly. He understood the strategy well. Distractions were effective, but timing was absolutely crucial. If they acted too quickly, it would appear staged. If they delayed, the leak could spread uncontrollably. And over everything loomed Melania herself, angry, hurt, and demanding a complete erasure of the entire scandal. Back at the White House, Charlotte Winslow brought troubling updates. She had spent hours contacting various sources to trace the leak. Some believed it originated within the medical community itself. Others whispered it came directly from a staffer with access to private files. Whatever the ultimate source, one thing was perfectly clear. Someone wanted this information to be public, and they had been incredibly cautious in handling it. Melania paced the residence, phone pressed tightly to her ear while Hall briefed her on the strategy meeting. "They believe we can contain this," he stated evenly, "but they will require time and significant resources." "Time we do not have," Melania snapped in response. "By now, half of D.C. has heard the rumors. If Jasmine Crockett gets hold of this info," she stopped herself, biting back her words. The mere thought of the outspoken congresswoman utilizing this against her made her chest tighten. Charlotte entered the room quietly, holding a notepad. "Ma'am, there is already significant chatter online, small accounts for now, but people are starting to ask difficult questions." Melania's facial expression hardened. "Shut it down entirely." "How?" Charlotte asked softly. "Call the platforms, call the editors, call anyone necessary. I do not care if it requires significant pressure or political favors. No one repeats this story." The room went completely silent. Even in Washington, where controlling narratives was routine practice, this demand was extreme. Silencing an entire city was akin to attempting to hold back a flood with bare hands. Later that evening, Hall gathered the crisis team once again. They discussed increasingly desperate options. They considered fake leaks to muddy the waters, quiet payments to reporters, and significant pressure on social media platforms to flag the story specifically as misinformation. Each proposed plan carried serious inherent risk. One advisor leaned forward, lowering his voice significantly. "The real danger here is not the report itself. It is the public reaction. If people witness how hard the First Lady is attempting to hide this, they will automatically assume the worst has happened. We need to make her appear completely calm, composed, and far above it all. Not angry, not afraid." Hall exhaled slowly. That was much easier said than done. Meanwhile, word of Melania's intense frustration was spreading faster than the initial rumor itself. Staffers whispered among themselves. Journalists listened intently. The specific phrase "explosive outburst" began circulating in private messages among various reporters, each waiting patiently for someone bold enough to finally publish it. In Dallas, Texas, reporter Lyle Morgan sat at his desk staring at an email from a trusted contact. Attached was a scanned copy of what looked like the actual DNA report. He was not the only individual who possessed it, but few were willing to verify it before publishing. He called a congressional aide he deeply trusted. "Have you heard what is currently happening in the East Wing?" "She is panicking," the aide replied immediately. "If you have got something solid, you should run the story." Morgan leaned back, completely torn between caution and professional ambition. If he went forward, the story would explode nationwide. If he waited, someone else would certainly beat him to it. While Morgan debated, Jasmine Crockett was already watching events closely from her Dallas office. Reading through various forwarded emails, her sharp eyes narrowed significantly. "This is not merely a family issue," she stated calmly. "This is about transparency, about what they are hiding and why." Her aides exchanged quick glances. They recognized that tone. Crockett had found her opening. But before she could act, Melania's team was already preparing a comprehensive counter-narrative that would severely test how much control the First Lady truly possessed. Crockett was not known for subtlety. She built her reputation by speaking directly and fearlessly, saying precisely what others avoided saying. So when news of Barron's DNA leak reached her, she did not hesitate for a second. Her staff assembled in a small Dallas conference room, laptops open, coffee cups scattered about, and a whiteboard covered entirely in names and timelines. Jasmine stood at the front, hands firmly on her hips, her expression incredibly sharp. "All right," she stated, her voice firm but steady. "Tell me exactly what we know. No filler, just the facts." Her aide, Marcus Bellamy, tall and quick-thinking, clicked to the first slide on the presentation. The document first appeared in a secure email chain among medical personnel. Someone forwarded the document. We do not know who, but it spread very fast. At least 3 reporters possess copies, but none have published the story yet. "Why not?" Jasmine asked. "They are afraid," Marcus replied. "If they print it, the First Lady's lawyers will strike back hard. It is easier to stay quiet." Jasmine smirked. "Afraid? That is not journalism, that is protecting power." The room chuckled nervously at the comment. They knew that when Jasmine spoke like this, she was ready to make a move. Another aide, Lena Ortiz, added her input. "We are also hearing Melania has been absolutely furious, yelling at staff, making direct threats. People are calling it her biggest meltdown since entering the White House." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "Volatile. That is not a headline. It is a clear warning sign. If she is reacting like this, the leak hits much deeper than they want anyone to realize." Jasmine leaned closer to the table, significantly lowering her voice. "If it is that personal, they will do absolutely anything to hide it. Which means it is our duty to ensure it does not stay hidden." The team exchanged very tense glances. They knew exactly what came next. Jasmine Crockett was not one to stand still. She picked up her phone and dialed a familiar number. On the other end, a trusted journalist answered, his tone immediately cautious. "Congresswoman, I heard you have been digging around the DNA story." "You heard right," Jasmine replied, pacing the floor as she spoke. "Tell me what you know, strictly off the record." The journalist hesitated before speaking. "I have seen the document, have not published it yet. It is too risky." "Risky for whom?" Jasmine asked sharply. "You, your paper, or the truth?" Silence hung in the air before he finally sighed. "The First Lady's team is already circling. They will destroy anyone who touches it." Jasmine's tone did not waver. "Then let them try. I am not easily intimidated." She ended the call and faced her team directly. "Here is the plan," she stated firmly. "We do not touch Barron. That is off limits. This is not about him. This is about her, about secrecy, denial, and the massive effort to protect an image while demanding silence from everyone else." Marcus nodded. "So, a public statement?" "Not just a statement," Jasmine replied, her tone highly charged. "We are setting the narrative ourselves. We will show what happens when leaders hide behind their power. The truth does not belong to politicians, it belongs to the people." That night, Jasmine drafted her remarks, short-pointed and impossible to dismiss. The next morning, outside her Dallas office, microphones completely surrounded her. She delivered her statement calmly and precisely. "Secrecy is the currency of the powerful," she began. "When information leaks or people speak out, it is not chaos. It is democracy at work. And when those in authority rush to bury the truth, we must ask a critical question. What are they so afraid of us discovering?" Reporters leaned in close, recording every single word. She mentioned neither Barron nor Melania, but her message was unmistakable. "Congresswoman Crockett," a journalist called out loudly, "are you accusing the First Lady of a cover-up operation?" Jasmine's eyes met his directly. If the truth makes someone uncomfortable, she stated evenly, that is their problem, not the people's. Within hours, the video clip went viral. Hashtags about secrecy and transparency trended across all social media. News outlets replayed her statement repeatedly, debating whether she had gone too far or perhaps not far enough. Meanwhile, in the East Wing, Melania's team gathered urgently. Hall, her communications director, played the viral clip. His face was visibly pale. She is careful, but she is targeting us directly. She is framing this entire thing as a moral issue. Melania's jaw tightened. Then we push back even harder. But Jasmine was not finished talking. She was preparing to reveal evidence, proof strong enough to make silence impossible. At the Rayburn House office building, the tension was palpable. Cameras lined the hallways, reporters jostled for position, and whispers filled the air. Jasmine Crockett was about to testify before a subcommittee, but everyone knew this was no routine hearing. She entered the chamber with steady composure, papers in hand. No theatrics, just pure purpose. Every step she took drew significant attention. Across Washington, Melania's team watched intently from the White House. Hall leaned forward, anxiety etched across his face. If she goes straight at it, we are in deep trouble, he muttered. Melania sat rigid beside him. She had been assured Jasmine would not name Barron, but that did not matter anymore. When Jasmine began speaking, the room fell still. She adjusted her microphone carefully. America does not just run on laws, she stated. It runs on trust. And when truth becomes optional for those in power, that fundamental trust erodes day by day. Committee members shifted uneasily in their seats. Reporters leaned in. Jasmine continued, her voice sharpening noticeably. We have seen it before. Leaders demanding silence and loyalty when truth becomes inconvenient. But democracy collapses when secrecy becomes the standard. The people deserve better. A congressman interrupted her. Congresswoman Crockett, today's topic is transparency in government contracts. Exactly, Jasmine replied, meeting his eyes directly. Transparency. Whether it is contracts, classified files, or private reports hidden to protect political families, the pattern is identical. Cover it up. Silence dissent. Hope no one notices the situation. Murmurs rippled across the room. She had not crossed the line, but everyone knew what she was implying. Cameras zoomed in as she unfolded a document. It was not the DNA report itself, but a detailed timeline of communications. Within 48 hours of the leak, Jasmine explained, tapping the page firmly, calls were made to media outlets, editors were heavily pressured, and online discussions were suppressed. If this report meant nothing, why work so hard to erase it? Gasps filled the room. The focus had shifted entirely. It was no longer about Barron, it was about control. Congresswoman, a reporter shouted out loudly, are you accusing the First Lady of suppressing information? I am saying this, Jasmine replied calmly. Truth does not need bodyguards. If it stands on its own, let the public see it. Back at the White House, Melania's fist clenched tightly. She is exploiting this, she snapped angrily. Hall tried to reason with her. She is turning it into a transparency issue. If we attack, it will look defensive. Silence looks weak, Melania countered. Back at the hearing, Jasmine gave her closing remarks, her voice soft but resolute. Families should be off limits. But when secrecy becomes a weapon for power, we all lose. This is not about one specific family. It is about every family that deserves honesty from its leaders. The room erupted in noise. Reporters fired off questions rapidly. Members whispered urgently to one another. Jasmine gathered her papers and left as calmly as she had arrived. Her message echoed long after she exited the room. She had not required the DNA report. The reaction alone had become the main story. By nightfall, her words dominated every news network. The truth does not need bodyguards, flashed across television screens and social platforms alike. News anchors dissected every single sentence. Analysts debated the inevitable fallout. At diners and living rooms across the country, Americans watched and discussed the events. "She is right," one woman stated, setting down her coffee cup. "If it is nothing, why the panic?" a man replied thoughtfully. "Because there is always something they are hiding from us." It was not about the report's validity anymore. It was entirely about public perception. And in politics, perception often matters significantly more than fact. Social media only magnified the growing storm. Hashtags like Barron's Truth or Cover Up and our Crockett trended for days on end. The controversy exploded online overnight. TikTok creators quickly edited Jasmine's comments alongside old Trump family interviews, highlighting perceived inconsistencies and hidden truths. Even Instagram joined in, spreading memes of Melania's rumored breakdown. Doctored photos showed broken vases and shattered glass across the White House residence. The atmosphere was incredibly tense. Hall and Charlotte called an emergency meeting in the communications office. Staff members looked absolutely exhausted. Loosened ties and tired eyes were glued to various screens. Every attempt to contain the story seemed to only worsen it. Hall rubbed his forehead as Jasmine's clip played on repeat in the background. "She never even mentioned Barron by name," he muttered. "Yet somehow she turned it into a firestorm. She made it sound like she is standing up for people who look like her while we are the ones hiding behind curtains." Charlotte sighed deeply. "We cannot keep denying things without providing details. People already suspect we are covering something up. Why not just release the actual facts?" Melania entered the room quietly, her face unreadable. The room stiffened immediately. She glanced at the screen. "This woman Crockett thinks she can use me," she stated sharply. "She believes I am weak." "She does not know me at all." No one replied to her statement. Meanwhile, in Dallas, Jasmine's phone was blowing up constantly. National networks CNN, MSNBC, even Good Morning America wanted her on the air. Her staff filled the office, energized by the momentum. Marcus smiled at a new poll result. "Congresswoman, you are trending nationwide right now. Independents are calling you the voice of transparency. Approval just jumped 7 points overnight." Jasmine leaned back thoughtfully in her chair. "That is good, but we have to stay focused on principle, not gossip. If this turns into a personal issue about Barron, we lose all credibility." Lena nodded in agreement. "So what is next? Another public statement? A major television appearance?" "Not yet," Jasmine replied, tapping her pen slowly. "Let them chase me. The longer they wait for a comment, the more control we keep. But when I speak again, it has to hit like a hammer across the country." Across America, people debated the issue in classrooms, offices, and neighborhood cafes. Parents worried about their children being pulled directly into politics. Workers complained about leaders twisting the truth. What most agreed on was that Jasmine had struck a nerve. Secrecy inside the White House breeds deep mistrust. Hall finally spoke directly to Melania. "Madam First Lady, if we attack, we prove her exact point. But if we stay silent, she completely controls the narrative. We need a third option." Melania's eyes narrowed significantly. "Then create one for us." Outside, as cameras rolled and social media churned relentlessly, the chaos only grew. Jasmine had captured the nation's full attention, but Melania was not retreating. She was preparing to respond harder than anyone expected. Before Melania could act, Jasmine was already refining her message, ready for the very next round. By the third day, Melania's silence had become the main story. News tickers asked why she had not responded. Opinion writers speculated wildly about her mindset. For someone known for restraint, every quiet hour looked like weakness. That morning in the East Wing, Melania's team gathered together. Heavy curtains blocked the sunlight, adding to the intense tension. Hall stood at the table with his notes ready. Charlotte was surrounded by numerous press clippings. Melania entered last, dressed in a pale suit, her face expressionless. "Tell me our plan of action," she stated. Hall began carefully. "We push back, but strategically. Present you first as a mother, then as the First Lady. We frame Crockett as reckless, someone willing to drag families into politics just for attention. If we make this entire thing about decency, we win. Charlotte added her input. We have drafted a short statement, no direct mention of Crockett at all, just a strong reminder that children should be strictly off limits. Melania skimmed the document, then set it aside. Not enough. Hall, if we go too hard, it could backfire. Crockett possesses public sympathy. A direct attack could look incredibly defensive. Melania leaned forward, her voice steady. I am not hiding anything. I am protecting. There is a distinct difference. She makes me look desperate. I will show her real strength. The room fell completely silent. Hall knew when she spoke like that, there was absolutely no changing her mind. Later that day, a camera crew entered the White House quietly. It was not for a public event or a holiday celebration. It was for Melania's personal response, sitting by a window with sunlight touching her face. She spoke directly to the camera lens. I have always believed children must remain off limits, she stated, her tone firm. What I see now is truly shameful. People in power spreading rumors and lies about my family. My son deserves privacy, not a public spectacle. I will always protect him. The recording lasted under 2 minutes, but it hit very hard. Networks replayed it endlessly across the country. Commentators debated whether she appeared strong or merely defensive. Supporters praised her as a deeply devoted mother. Critics argued she had effectively dodged the main issue. In Dallas, Jasmine's team watched the clip together. Marcus broke the silence that followed. She is leaning heavily into the family angle. Smart move on her part, makes her seem practically untouchable. Jasmine folded her arms deliberately, untouchable until the truth surfaces again. Sympathy cannot permanently cover up what is hidden. That is where we keep the focus. The next morning, Melania's pushback gained significant momentum through friendly media outlets. The intense battle for public opinion had only just begun.